Welcome to the Conference on Business and Ethics podcast, brought to you by the Orange Catholic Foundation. My name is Rand Sperry. I'm CEO of Sperry Equities and Sperry Commercial, a national real estate company with over 300 people. And I have my co-host here, Randy Redwitz, a CPA and owns a CPA firm called Redwitz and Company, a large-size brokerage accounting firm here in Orange County. And with us today, we have the co-founder of Wahoo's Tacos, Wing Lam, and also Eric Morley from his advertising agency for Wahoo's Taco to talk to us today. So I hope, Wing, that you're prepared and that you're not going to wing it. All right. I'm sure you've heard that before.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm going to kick it off with our audience having an understanding of Wahoo's Tacos and how you started this, because you told the story before. It's pretty interesting. So I want to kind of get the ground up story of how old you were when you started it and formed it and how you grew it and the challenges you had growing it. And then Randy will take it away with a question after that.
Well, I think back in the day, as we call it, everybody has a dream. I was in corporate America, working of all things on the space shuttle and all these aerospace stuff. And it was, you know, the booming years, the Reagan years, everybody's flying around town. And I realized that maybe corporate America wasn't quite suited up, you know, for us, because it wasn't that much fun, you know, 9 to 5. And a bunch of the kids that we grew up with were all surfing. So my brother Ed is getting ready to get out of college. We're kind of chit-chatting, and I'm kind of like, hey, you know, you might not have this much fun. And we had 2 career options at the moment. My brother had a pretty good law firm that he did all the immigration law. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like fun, you know, good family business. Or we can do what we really want to do, which is food. So we thought about it, and, you know, this is the mid-'80s, you know, and we're just kind of chit-chatting, and I said, hey, maybe, what do we really like? And all the surfers talked about having a place to hang out after, you know, surfing. And we said, why don't we do a fish taco place? You know, so it was kind of those, we literally, on the back of a menu, napkin, we kind of wrote down some recipes because we had to turn it into the, to get a business license. And literally, all joking aside, we winged it because we had no idea other than our parents' Chinese restaurant, the one on Balboa Island. So we had that behind us, but we had never done our own thing. Had no idea about all the licenses, all the permits, all the things that now we're really good at. But we just kind of opened one little shop up in Costa Mesa. And my kid brother Mingo was still in college. And he's like, you guys go do that. I'm going to go to law school. And little by little, we started getting busy. And literally the rest is history. We kind of kept him from going to law school. He ended up joining the business. And the 3 of us have been doing it ever since. You know, it's been a crazy, like we talked about, nobody would ever thought we'd be this big. But at the same time, also with the current situation, this is probably the first time in 32 years that we've seen something that we've never seen before.
Tell us how big you are.
We're at about 60 stores right now, with 8 of them still not open because they're in the stadiums, the airports, and the college campuses.
Great.
That's a tremendous success story there. I mean,
Randy, before you ask that question, are you as blown away as I am that he was in the aerospace business?
No, me too.
I mean, talk about going down the wrong path. I mean, you are where you're supposed to be, Wing, right now. Yeah. I'll tell you. But,
yeah,
that's something I didn't know. Something I've learned this morning already about you.
Wow.
Here's Randy, sorry.
No, Randy, a great story, though, that a lot of people don't know is when I worked on the last contract that I worked on, I was on the contract side of the business, right? I worked for a think tank back in Lake Forest called Sparta Incorporated. And they were national, and they put me on this contract to, you know, to work on real-time battle management communication. So in other words, before anybody in the Air Force would launch a missile, everybody had to be on the same page.
Okay. Wow.
The only company in the world at the time that had the technology to communicate in real time was a company called Sun Microsystems, a startup. At the time, when we were doing this in 1987, they were basically a $2 million startup company.
My goodness.
Fast forward that became the backbone of the internet.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the contract that I worked on before I left.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Doing that and then building tacos. Boy,
Then building, I went from high tech to low tech.
oh my goodness, what a great story. Wing, how is COVID? I mean, it's dramatic how it's impacted the restaurant business in general, but more specifically, how has it impacted you and your stores, and you know, how are you dealing with it?
Well, you know, you got to start the story is you got to have faith. This is what this is all about, because
Sure.
you don't know what you don't know, right? So when it hit, it literally, I was with a friend the day before everything got shut down. He had
Yeah.
just flown in from New York City, and we were going to a concert, and we were all meeting in LA, and literally it took 35 minutes to go from Orange County to like LAX, basically,
Right.
right?
Right.
And we all got there early, and we're all kind of like, this is fun. We get to spend some more time together. And he said, you know, kind of crazy, but I just flew in with 3 people on an airplane,
Oh my goodness.
an entire airplane.
Wow.
And we're like, wow, maybe there's something more too. Because remember, we were hearing all this. And
Yeah.
then the NBA and the NHL shut down the next day. And that's literally the beginning. Because up until then, we're like, things are going to be fine. It's in New York, it's in Seattle, it's in San Francisco. It's not here.
Right.
But
Right.
once that happened, literally, you saw this freight train go off the cliff. We
Yeah.
went from doing 100% of business down to 15% overnight.
Wow.
I mean, just
Wow.
like massive.
Oh
So
my
luckily for us and Eric, we were all talking and said, what do we need to do? Well, what can we control? Labor, right? So let's scale it down.
Right.
Because we didn't see this thing, you know, like at least then we're talking 2 to
Sure.
3 months. So
Sure.
let's cut the labor down. Let's minimize. Let's see what stores we can keep open. So immediately, like I said, the college campuses, a bunch of the stores closed.
Yeah.
And then we said, okay, let's see which ones we can keep open because it was still open for takeout. So
Right.
that's kind of like the, you know, the beginning of that. And then we kind of stabilized everything, but we weren't basically just keeping the lights on, I call it. And then about 2 weeks into it, Eric and I were talking, we goes, wait, there's 4 more stores on the bubble that if they don't get a couple more $100 a week, they're going to have to shut down as well. Because there's just all the businesses around our restaurants, they're all closed. Everybody's working
Right.
from home.
Right.
So
Right.
the lunch business just vanished. So it was like this, you know, so we were 60% lunch, 40% dinner. Our lunch business went down to 10%,
Oh.
right? And then 5% for dinner.
Oh.
So, you know, 20 employees per store down to 3,
Oh.
right? So
That's
it's
awesome.
just, so we got to go back. And then Eric and I talked about going back to the roots, which means what are we really good at? Well, the brand survived based on events. Well, there's no events going on. Everything got canceled.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the charity events, sporting events, everything.
Coachella, Stagecoach.
Yeah,
Sure.
everything. So we started looking and said, hey, we have friends that are in the hospitals. We have friends at the fire department, the police department. The chief of police from Newport Beach, John Lewis, he got his very first mask from us because he couldn't get them anywhere. So we're like, we know where we can get the stuff, right?
Yeah.
We were the first people to get the face shields for all the nurses. I mean,
Okay.
because we had, you know, we're very resourceful.
Yeah.
So besides having faith in, hey, we just got to keep moving, right? And we don't know how this is going to happen. But back then, we're like, we just got to get to May. Well, we're in October, right?
I know.
So opening, closing, all this stuff is moving, and all the things that are totally out of our control. So with Eric by my side as my co-pilot, we literally started making deliveries to people in shelter in San Clemente. And that's where the joke Wing Dash came from, because one of the houses we delivered.
You got to jump back to how that Wing Dash, you know, kind of things started in the first place, because I think it has a lot to do with the whole journey since back then.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Wing.
Yeah, because we started literally going to families in San Clemente from a church. And they said, hey, we'd love for you to take care of some of our people.
Yeah.
And one of the homes that we went to had a DoorDash sign on the guy's car.
Okay.
And that's when Eric said, hey, forget about DoorDash. It's Wing Dash
Wing Dash.
because we were zigzagging across San Clemente. We
Sure.
had about a dozen families per night that we would deliver to. So we would have an hour window to go to 10 homes,
Oh
right?
my goodness.
So we had this grid, and Eric by my side goes, okay, we got to go next, left, right, you know?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Boy, that is really taking it back to basics.
Yeah,
Wow.
so we just kind of say, hey, what can we do? And along the way, we asked, you know, the churches, Shoreline Church of San Clemente goes, hey, we don't need to make money here. We just can cover our costs. So I can
Right.
keep my employees going.
Sure.
So that's how the ball started moving, you know? And Eric can tell you, I mean, Loan
Incredible.
Depot, Bear Paint, Subaru North America, all these great companies said, what are
Constellation
you guys
brand.
doing? You know? And they said, Wing is doing this with Eric, and then Wendy from K-Rock, Melissa from Yogurt Land, all of our friends, we all kind of started, hey, why don't we do this together?
Oh,
And that's how the California Love Drop became what it became, because it wasn't just Wahoos, it was a bunch of us together, you know, kind of, because think about this for a second. All my events friends, Hint Water, Monster Energy Drink, all of them, they're all sitting at home doing nothing.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So we said, hey, we got product that maybe it's dated, right?
Sure.
We're going out. So we started not realizing how much the police officers, the graveyard shift for the hospitals, they're like, we'll take that caffeinated Monster Energy drinks.
Yeah.
We love it. And
Yeah.
it was amazing. So when we would show up, it was literally like Christmas, you know, at the hospitals, the fire departments, the nursing homes. I mean, you name it, we've been to. And it's just been one of those, like, you can see the energy. Eric and I wake up and go, hey, what are we going to do this week to really top that off?
That's
And
amazing.
And I think it even goes back to, you know, we talked about first responders, but the other first responders was the grocery outlets.
oh, yeah.
The outlets working around the clock, just
Yep.
trying to get product on the shelf.
Right, right,
Everyone is
right.
buying 5 times the amount of product that they
Exactly.
normally do.
Yep.
So we actually went over to Constellation Brands, which is Corona Pacifico Modelo beer. Is they went ahead and supported several of the programs where we actually went to Super, out in, was it Rancho?
Oh,
Dominguez?
Ontario, Rancho
Yeah.
Cucamonga.
Yeah, at 2:00 in the morning, delivering food for that next shift to keep them fired up.
Wow.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
Has this created a whole new business model for you, though? I mean, it's out of tremendous charitable work, but at the same time, it almost sounds to me like you could create another side of the business when things hopefully get back to normal.
well, I'm sure DoorDash, are you part of DoorDash though, in terms of ordering and getting food? Could I call and get Wahoo tacos?
You can, but most of the delivery companies, they're another business of themselves,
Yeah.
and they take such a large percentage of the bottom line.
They do.
So it became more efficient for Eric and I to go out and team up with our friends to say, hey, because there was barely any, you know, money to cover the cost. If we shared that with DoorDash, it would have just been completely negative. But the fact is, when the chiefs, when the nurses saw Eric and I got a joke about this. At our first delivery to Chalk Hospital at 9:00 at night, we pull up, we're unloading, and the head nurse knew me from somewhere, you know, before. And we have the mask, the shields, the gloves, everything. And I turned around and she gives me a bear hug. And I'm like, oh my God, right? And we were everybody's taken aback because remember, this is where you just elbowed each other, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
You had
she
to go get
basically said,
checked after that, huh?
yeah. So she said, hey, we're cool. They're getting tested, right? But they were so thankful and excited that we were there. And I hadn't seen her, and I can't even tell you how many years, right? So Chalk became our go-to place because a lot of the kids didn't have COVID, but they couldn't leave the hospital.
Sure.
So it's very secure. And so we came and we, most of the time, I think maybe, except for maybe one lunch, we always came at night, right? So it was a super good tour because everybody else would come during the day. So we would come at night.
The night shift needs some attention too.
Oh, yeah.
I know that. I worked the night shift in a hospital when I was in college.
Yeah.
Well, you know, for the edification of the audience, Wing Lam was a keynote speaker for the Business and Ethics Conference. I don't know how many years back. It
I
seems
think it
like
was 4 years ago.
4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, what a good pick, right? I mean, here, look, when you know the S hits the fan, there's Wing out there doing the right thing for his customers and delivering and doing the Wing Dash, and that's very cool. I'm going to throw you a little bit of a hardball though question, and the question is, what ethical challenges have you had during this process? And I'm going to give you an example because I'm a landlord to a lot of restaurants across the country. We have 25 retail centers and a bunch of restaurant tenants. How have you managed to pay the rent, or have you paid the rent, or have you worked a deal out? What have you done to mitigate that issue, which is a big issue for restaurant owners besides their employees?
Yeah, the big thing for us is we're still about 15 percentage points from breaking even. We're at about 65. So we're ahead of a lot of our restaurants, but we're behind, I call it the drive-ins, right? The drive-throughs. The drive-through guys are down about 10, 15%, but because they cut down the labor, they're okay. So their numbers are actually pretty decent for what they're doing. We need to get to about, 80% so we can, you know, afford to pay rent. So we're working with all our landlords and trying to negotiate terms, because right now, when you're only using the last 2 weeks, actually, right? Let's just give it a month, 25% of our actual dining facility. It's kind of hard to pay rent, and we're having to deal with all the outside, stuff that we had to buy. So we've incurred all this extra expense. Everything now is on takeout containers. So we've had to change our whole model from using dishwashers and all that. So anywhere where we can cut down the labor, we have to pivot to say, hey, let's do this instead because it's more cost effective. We've managed to pay every one of our other vendors because, if we're using their food, we got to, but again, it's what we're selling. So we're trying to find a happy medium with our landlords to say, hey, at best case scenario, based on what we know so far, assumptions is we'll be at 50% until next summer, right? Because we're going into the winter. I don't think the dining room is going to be any more occupied than 50%. And that's the best case scenario right now, because we can't get past this 25, right? And so with that, we're hoping that our landlords are going to hopefully defer some of it to the back end, maybe give us a little bit of a break so we can get through this thing together. Because the other side, what I'm seeing a lot of friends is they're like, hey, here's, the keys to the building, you can have it, because I can't afford to pay 10,000 a month or 20 or 30 when I'm doing nothing, right? So that's the main thing. So we're trying to work, and we're open book. It's all because we're all on percentage rents anyway. So it's not like, hey, we're making $1 million, but we can't pay you rent. Here's the book, right? If we think we're doing better, in some locations are above the 65, we'll say, here's some money, right? Because we want to be fair, right? But again, we can use that little bit of extra money to offset some of the locations that are really taking it in the shorts. Because if 65 is the average, there's still some stores that are doing like 40 to 50, right? And you're going to have ones that are 75. So that's where we are. So we're hoping guys like you, where, hey, can we work it out? Just like a mortgage, put it on the back end, but it just can't be the straight up amount because we're not doing anything right now, right?
Right.
That's the thing.
I think one of the key successes of Wahoo's is ethics. And throughout the whole process is, I have a lot of peers that have businesses, and especially in retail businesses, they just put their head down. They didn't communicate with anyone. Wahoo's consistently communicated. They're very, very, very upfront. They spoke to the landlords. They sat down with the landlords. They said, here's where we're at. We don't know where this is going, but let's both make it through this whole thing. And so it's a lot of, I think, the reason Blue Sea works with Wahoo's is because of their high level of ethics and their high level of consistency in communication and their high level of being a part of the community. That's the key to the success right there.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, because when I look at our tenants, the ones we're most angry at are not the ones that aren't paying the rent. It's the ones that are hiding from us
Yeah.
and don't want to talk to us and don't want to work things out.
Yeah.
But that's fortunately a small percentage compared
Yeah.
to all the great tenants that we have that are like, just like what you said, Eric, that, you know, here's where we're at, here's what we can do. And we all have to work together. So,
I think it kind of goes to
Man.
the point is lack of communications starts wars.
yeah.
And the key thing in each and every aspect, even, you know, you talk about ethics with employees, is Wahoo's corporate was very, very, very communicative to the employees.
Mhm.
They were very communicative to the vendors.
Yeah.
And to really understand is we don't know what this is, where this is going to take us, and where the future is. But we have this partnership. We have this partnership with our employees. We have this partnership with our vendors. We have this partnership with all the other businesses around too. Is, you know, I really find it interesting is sometimes Wahoo's couldn't do caterings. So Wing would refer it out to another restaurant in the area to do the catering for them. It's like, it's a partnership. It's a communication.
Yeah.
It's how everyone got through this whole thing.
You know, Eric, you mentioned something there about future. And I know, Wing, you just talked about, you know, through next summer, you know, whether you can even get to 50% in the inside restaurant dining. But
Yeah.
what do you see the long-term side of this impact? I mean, maybe it's too cloudy to tell. I don't know, but it's got to have a long-term effect, you know. And I don't know what you're thinking, both of you, you know, relative to your industry.
I think the big thing will be is the comfort level and also the safety, right? Because right now, on a daily basis, I probably get one email a day from a customer that would say, "Hey, I was at such and such store, and I noticed that your cook had his mask down below his nose." And I'm like, "He's not talking to you. He's talking to the food. It's not going to affect you, right?" I can't say that, but right, the whole thing is the breathing, right? So he's in the kitchen. He's at least 10 feet away from you, right? But the fact is that, you know, he's supposed to have his mask on. I get that. So I have to remind my team, right? So there's this constant comfort. So I think the whole formula, like anything else, I think there's 10% of people that high water, whatever, I'm not wearing a mask, right? There's the 10% that goes, "Oh my God, I'm not leaving the house. I'm not doing anything because everything." And then there's the 80 of us in the middle, like, whatever, right? I'll put it on, I'll take it off, whatever, right? So if we don't have the tens or whatever that percentage is on the either end, if we can get everybody to the middle, then I think we're going to be able to say, hey, like I flew 2 weeks ago back east, and the safest place I have felt in the last 6 months, all joking aside, was at the airport. Every single person, the loudspeaker, everybody's going, "Hey, wear a mask, wear a mask," right? So other than taking it off to have a drink or a snack, everybody had it. And you hear it every day on the news. Somebody got kicked off an airplane, somebody got, for not wearing a mask. So those people, and I don't think, as far as I know, I haven't heard of one incident of somebody getting COVID at an airport or in an airplane. So there must be something, right, to that, whether or not you believe it or not, but nobody's getting it, right? So if we could get the people at the beaches or all these places, hey, if you do your part, I do my part, right? And again, the doctors will tell you, don't go riding your bicycle and put your mask on, you're going to pass out, right? But but if you're in a group, whatever, whether indoors or outdoors, I think if you kind of practice it, I think there's something about it, right? But other than that, I've argued with people from all over. I'm like, "Oh, I don't like it. Oh, yes, you got to have it." And I'm like, dude, nobody's going to agree on it, right? Our current president got it. I don't know, right? And his whole thing is not making sure nobody wore it in the cabinet, and now a bunch of people have it. I don't think anybody's going to die from it, but I don't know what the long-term effects are, right? So for us, it's like, what do we do? So we just got to keep, you know, hey, our governor is, I think, closer to the conservative side. So he's like, hey, this, right? Or our president's on the other side, right? So we're literally on two opposite ends of the argument. But the problem is we're in California, so we kind of have to go by what Newsom says. And I don't disagree with him. I don't like it, but we got to do what we got to do, right? And that's what we got. That's if I think everybody just did it, right? I think we would have gotten out of this thing back in May.
That's
But
very true.
every holiday, we live in Newport, right? You just got to come down to the beach and see what's going on.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
are you crazy,
Yeah.
right? And
Wow.
I think, you know,
We live,
right?
we live in Dana Point, and
Right?
just around the harbor there, my goodness, it's just it's a free for all.
Exactly. And I
Well,
think like the argument is, well, we all know each other. It goes, yeah, but does everybody know where everybody's been? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
You know, but
I have to tell you, I was always a math guy, and
Yeah.
I still am. And I have to say, and I'm just gonna say on this podcast, I'm actually proud of the country though in general, as a result of where we are with COVID. We have, I think, a little over 200,000 deaths in this country.
Yeah.
We have 330 million people. It's let's just put it this way, it's
Yeah.
7/100ths of 1%
yeah,
of this population has died from this.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's a success story. Unfortunately, I mean, every death matters, but it really is quite a success story as a country as a whole.
Well, you know,
by the way, go ahead.
Oh, it's interesting you bring that up and I kind of go back to Wing and his brothers of how forward thinking they were in this whole thing is they were giving out masks and having their staff wear masks a month before even masks became popular.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden all the masks started, you know, so this was actually in, I believe it was beginning of April. He already had the masks.
Oh,
There it is.
Got the OG one there.
So we got one final question, or I had one, now I have two. Do Randy and I get one of those masks? And
Yeah, there you go.
absolutely.
One to it?
Absolutely.
Fine.
Love it. We love it. I love it.
And the final question is you are a family business. It's I
Yes.
guess three brothers.
Yeah.
And how's that been right now? Has that really been a source of strength for you guys to be a family going through this? Or are you
Yeah.
beating each other over the head? Just
It's always, as they say, you love them and you hate them, right? Like everybody else. I couldn't have done all this without my brothers, Mingo and Ed behind me going, hey, go figure it out, right? How to keep the lights on. So they just said, the marching orders, go figure it out. I did. So we kept 4 additional stores from closing. So through all this, we lost 2 stores in LA, mostly due to the fact that LA is another country because they had the protests, the looting, and our stores got hit. So after all that, we're like, you know what? Maybe we can just stay in Orange County. So we're down to 1 store in LA and 1 in San Diego because again, all the stuff happened, right? That we're out of our control. So without my brothers, I mean, really the backbone of our, company is having guys make sure that, like Eric says, the communication, and make sure that everybody has supplies, because you'd be amazed how quickly takeout containers vanished because everybody went from doing regular plates
Oh, yeah.
to takeout. So we had a huge shortage on that, shortage on tortillas, shortage on the proteins, because all of a sudden there was, everything was going to the supermarkets. So for a while there, it came close to not getting chicken, steak, all these, things. So again, not only am I busy trying to keep the lights on, we got to keep it supplied and make sure that our employees are safe, all the stuff. So it's a constant, making sure that everybody's on the same page. And knock on wood, I think we've had friends of our employees get sick. None of us have gotten sick. Everybody's quarantined if they thought they were exposed. Our office has been open the entire time. Everybody wears a mask here. Everybody checks their temperature. So we do all the protocols because we want to make sure that we can support the stores.
Right.
So it's a lot of that. And I've heard, even Eric, a lot of people are working remotely. So it's a restaurant, luckily, good and bad, somebody's got to be there to make the tacos, right? So I wish they could work remotely, but they got to be there.
Well, this has been awesome. The new business term is, how are you pivoting during this most unusual time of all of our lives? I mean, this has never happened. There's no map. We're Lewis and Clark on this adventure, I guess. So thank you, Eric, for also being on, and Wing Lam, co-founder of Wahoo's Taco. We appreciate you on this podcast today. Have a
Yeah.
great week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wayne. Thank you.
All right. See you.
Take good care.